Here's what's coming up in episode 194, Marla Martenson.
The matchmaking's there, but reinventing myself as this, intuitive reader and healer and advisor and coach. I work a couple of psychic hotlines. Then I saw him in the corner of the living room, and I saw his face was kind of thin. He had this kind of dark, longer hair, and he flashed a light at me. This light was flashing at me. And I was like, oh my God. He was showing me, yes, I'm here. It was so incredible. And so I said, hey, do you have a name? What's your name? And the board spelled out Nigl, Nigel. And I was like, wow, you look like a Nigel. I like it. A soulmate, you probably won't want to kill the person. With a twin flame, he goes, it's happened.
Welcome to the Big Seance podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the Seance.
Marla Martenson teaches women how to step into their divine confidence, power, self-love, and magic. She grew up in the Pacific Northwest, where she spent much of her childhood in the thick, damp, moss-filled woods that surrounded her family home. It was there that she first connected to her inner magic and creativity. Like any self-respecting sorceress, Marla's favorite season was and is autumn. Mine too. She adored the crunching sound of leaves under her feet and delighted in collecting pine cones and communicating with the crows. The place summoned her Celtic roots, the part of her that was ancient, mystical, and powerful. Marla spent hours exploring, collecting red and gold maple leaves, climbing trees, and chatting with the nature spirits. In her work, Marla infuses everything she does with playfulness, curiosity, high-frequency energy, and enthusiasm. She believes that when you align to who you truly are, transformational shifts happen in all areas of your life. Marla Martenson is the author of several books, including Diary of a Beverly Hills Matchmaker, The Buddha Made Me Do It, which is what we talked about the last time Marla was here, way back in 2016 in episode 71. But tonight, we're talking about her beautiful new memoir that I just finished reading called The Magic Seeker. You can learn more about Marla by visiting her site at marlamartenson.com. Welcome back to the Parlor, Marla.
Yay. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. This year, we've had several people who were first on the show about the same time, 2016. And so we're coming full circle with a lot of our peeps. It's a loaded question, but what have you been up to since 2016?
Oh my gosh. It's 5 years ago. I can't even believe it that's when the Buddha came out. And so wrote that other memoir, of course. And besides the matchmaking, since I've been doing that for 20 years now, I've added psychic readings, distance healing. I'm a certified life coach now, transformational life coach for women. I specialize in boundaries and reinvention if women out there want to reinvent their life. So I've been doing that. That's been a couple of year journey there. And, just enjoying life and life as much as I can, infusing that magic in there.
What is it like kind of reinventing yourself? I feel like that's kind of what you've done.
Yes.
Still doing the matchmaking, but also like using, you've talked about in several of your books, the complicated relationship that you sometimes have with matchmaking, with the
Right.
with the clientele that you have. But you've used that in your work. I'm not explaining it very well, but
Right.
you're reinventing yourself, which I think is kind of cool.
Yes, and especially so, yeah, the matchmaking, the men are my paying clients, so they're more the high-end, wealthier guys who really are fueled by wanting a gorgeous looking woman. That's like their top priority, but they want the whole package. So it can be on the shallow end. And over the years, I've just wanted to wring some of their necks, like they want a certain eye color or chest size or, this or that. And I'm like, come on, this is so shallow. But it's been a wonderful career for me. I've really enjoyed it. But to balance that out, I really took a deep dive into the spiritual aspects of my life. And I talk a lot about that in the Buddha Made Me Do It, A Field Guide to Enlightenment, where I chronicle all of these things that I ended up getting into, like becoming a Reiki master and, learning to do readings and start channeling and opening up my channel. And then in the Magic Seeker, I've really come into a lot of that and reinventing myself as not only the matchmaking's there, but reinventing myself as this, intuitive reader and healer and advisor and coach, which when I'm doing, I work a couple of psychic hotlines, which I really love. And I have friends who were doing things like this and I admired them so much. I thought, what a freaking magical job. And I was like, I love that. I had a girlfriend who was working as a tarot reader and another woman I was on hotlines. I thought, you know what? I think I want to try that. Now, this was interesting. There's this psychic, his name is Andrew Anderson out of Chicago. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I mentioned him in the book. And I had a reading with him, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. And he told me at the time, he says, you should be, and he was spot on about everything he said, but he says, you should be doing readings. You'd be really good at it. And I said, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to, but it's so daunting to think about learning all the meanings of the cards and the tarot and stuff. And he goes, no, just learn the basics. You really should be doing it. You will do well. And so I thought, wow. But then a year went by. I never did it because I was busy and I didn't learn the cards, but it never left the back of my mind. You should be giving readings. And so finally, after a year, I start, learning them. I was giving some channeled readings for my angel. I was doing that, just little readings. But then I started learning the cards. And then I just dove in and started giving them professionally. And I was thrilled. I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Because when you do something you love, it's just doesn't feel like a job. It's so much fun.
Well, when I read that in your book, and I knew that before I read the book because I'd heard you were doing that. And in my mind, I was thinking, psychic hotlines are still a thing. Like I wasn't even sure it was still a thing. And then I started thinking, well, in this pandemic, I imagine people were reaching out to that kind of thing. And you have some really touching stories in the book of some of the readings and some of the people that reached out to you. And I also love that you used your time giving the readings on the psychic hotline as kind of a therapy for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought that was cool. Like when you needed it, you were just like, oh, I need to give some readings. And it kind of put you in a happy place.
Right. Yeah, I didn't realize psychic hotlines were such a thing either. There are a lot of them, and there are thousands of people using it every day. And there are apps now, like you can have an app on your phone, and there's text. People can text me. There's different apps for different things. You can do video chats with the psychic. You can do a phone call. You can do a chat on a text, different ways. And people, I find, of course, most of them are asking about their love life, but a lot of them want to ask about career or how they can open up their psychic channels. But as a matchmaker and coach, it's nice to be able to help these women out with their love life, or they want to meet someone. Or this is interesting. I never knew how many women out there were hoping their ex would come back. Because that's a big, big question. Is he coming back? Is he still thinking about me? And even if they were very maltreated, they're still hoping they'll come back. And that just pulls at my heartstrings, So I try to give them a little healing, a little coaching with that.
And it seems to me, if I remember correctly, there was a connection between a lot of those people contacting you of confidence. Like they just needed confidence. And so did you feel like that was part of your role too?
Yeah, or confirmation of what they already know. Like one woman, this wasn't in the book, but recently a woman, she'd been getting scammed by one of those Nigerian scammers. And he's pretending to be a different guy, like an American guy with a different picture. And she's been in touch with him and sending him money and this and that. And she says, well, once I did see the camera drop and it wasn't an American guy, it was an African guy and his accent wasn't, and this didn't line up and that didn't line up. And I said, because it's not real. He's a scammer. But she just couldn't accept it. And she says, oh, and I really gave it to her straight. I said, listen, and gosh, it's just when we're lonely and really want that connection, it's sometimes sad to see what we'll push aside, the reality of it. So I'm kind of there. Sometimes I'll give it to him straight. And sometimes I'll say, I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to, butter it up.
And I'm sure they appreciate that. It sounds to me like not every call requires psychic skills.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think they're calling the psychic hotline, but they want, and there's empathic readings, and so a lot of it is just my experience as a coach or that. And then I will infuse, I'll pull a few cards too, just to have that. They like that magical aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Well, we love our tools. Give us an update on Murth. Do you still work with your angel Murth?
Oh my gosh, Murth. So Murth, for the listeners, was my guardian angel that I wrote about in the Buddha Made Me Do It. And that was my angel, the first being I connected with. And she was coming through on the talking board. And then I was channeling her. And then a second angel, second in command, came in. His name is Thomas. And now Murth is left. Murth is gone. She doesn't come in anymore. And it's Thomas there all the time. And I was told that he's a very strong saint. It's that Saint Thomas. And he's my guide, my gatekeeper. He'll be the one there to escort me when I leave my body. And he's the one who helps me with my readings and stuff. And one night, oh, Patrick, this is so good. So sometimes I do out of body. I have those out of body experiences like astral travel at night, and it'll just happen spontaneously sometimes. And I wrote a lot about that in the Buddha Made Me Do It. But one night I was out of the body, and something made me say, Thomas, Thomas. I started calling for Thomas, telepathically. I saw him in the corner of the living room, way up. He was tall. He was way up in the corner. And I saw his face was kind of thin. He had this kind of dark, longer hair, and he flashed a light at me. This light was flashing at me. And I was like, oh my God. He was showing me, yes, I'm here. It was so incredible. Yeah, it was so incredible that I saw him. But I saw him in the astral with my astral, third eye.
Is this experience something that you planned and set up, or was this?
Oh, no.
Just happened?
Yeah, just happened. That's always how it is. Like in the Buddha Made Me Do It, when I talk about when I saw my father on the astral, all of a sudden I'm standing next to my bed and I'm looking over at Adolfo and wondering, he's in bed sleeping. I'm wondering what, because I'm like talking and wondering why he's not waking up. And I was looking. Also, it was in the corner of the wall of the room, and it looked like something was coming towards me. I just knew it. It was like a knowing that somebody or something was coming out of that space. And I was like, it's Dad, it's Dad, it's Dad. And I knew it. And my dad came and sat at the end of my bed, and he was wearing this dark, like a monk's cloak, and his face was kind of thin. And I scrambled to the edge of my bed and I put my hand on his arm, and I was like, I looked in his eyes, and he was looking at me with this knowing look, like a nodding kind of. He didn't say anything. I was like, I love you. 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 And then that's it. And then he disappeared, and I scrambled back in my bed, and I was like, oh my God. And then I woke up. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what just happened. It was just here, but it was in the astral.
Mm-hmm.
Because at night we leave our body, and so then you'll see these things.
That's interesting, because my grandma, who recently passed, before she passed, she told me about an experience where a couple of experiences where she saw my grandfather come back, her husband. And she said he was in like a monk's robe.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I was wondering, what in the heck is my dad doing in that monk's robe? And he was like an atheist kind of when he was alive. And it wasn't like he was thinking about monks or, I was like, that was interesting. But that's probably what he's working with now. He passed away in 2001. So who knows? He's maybe a monk now over there. I don't know.
You never know. Never
Yeah.
know. Might be a future thing.
Yeah.
So in this book, you've introduced us, and it's probably my favorite part. And we talked about it right before we started recording. But you introduced us to your mother and some really lovable cast of characters and old friends from back home. And I kind of feel like some of it is, could be a premise for a movie.
Oh,
With some of the
yes.
stories that you talked about.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that happy place that is back home with your mom.
Right. Well, I'm originally from Federal Way, Washington, which is 30 minutes south of Seattle. And that's where, when you were reading my bio, spent time in the forest and everything. So I come up here a lot. And my mom lives in a triple wide manufactured home in an age-approved community. And she's got a built-in full bar in her house. And so her place was really the hub of the whole neighborhood. And it used to be years ago, there would be sometimes 20 people would stop by her house throughout the day to have a drink. They'd bring snacks, and she was holding court behind the bar. Donna, her name's Donna Reed, is her last name. We call her Donna Reed. We love to just call the whole thing,
Yeah.
both names. And so now many of those wonderful people have passed on or moved or whatever, but there's still some great characters there. And I talk about some happenings with some of these older folks, because it's a 55 plus community, but a lot of them are 70s, 80s, 90s. And there was something that I used to love to go to. I called it the coffee club. And up at the clubhouse, they'd have this Saturday morning coffee with about 10 people. And, there was one former detective who used to be a detective in Hollywood. And then there was these other, the men and the women, married couples. And they were some of them were in their 90s. It was so fun. And I'd come to town and hey, you guys, I'm here. And I'd have coffee with them on Saturdays, and just a lot of fun stories and things that you wouldn't expect happening in the hood here. In a hood like this, which, I don't want to give too much away, but.
Oh, I love it. I loved those parts. Well, the only other book that I've read from you is The Buddha Made Me Do It. And, you have some funny stories about your husband, Adolfo, and him not really understanding your spiritual interests. And they seem to be, more cute and funny. And I related that to my own marriage when I was reading that book.
Mm-hmm.
In this book, you convinced Adolfo to go to a circle with you for channeled messages. Like, how in the world? I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it because, growing up Catholic in Mexico, for him, tarot cards were evil and all of this. And you definitely don't have a Ouija board in the house or anything like that, right? But he started to accept the tarot cards. And the channeling, he had said, channelers aren't real. They're all fake. People are just, they found a good way to make a living, but it's not real and da-da-da-da. So I had asked him, because I went to this, this is a big part of the book, is my shaman Riz, who is a trans channel, and he brings in his spirit guide called Red Eagle, and he leaves his body. And I do think, in my opinion, he is one of the best trans channels we have on the planet today. He is phenomenal, powerful. And I started going for 3 years, and I still go to the circles and do private sessions with them, healing and all that. But I had told Adolfo, I said, I'd love for you to see this video. And I showed him a video of Riz channeling Red Eagle. And he thought it was pretty interesting. He says, I think he's maybe is the real deal. I like this guy. And so then I says, well, would you be willing to come to a circle with me? And he said, sure, I'll go. And I was like, what? Because he doesn't go to anything. He would never go to an expo or nothing. I've gotten him to stay like 10 minutes at a vegan festival with me once, but he did come, and he seemed to enjoy it. But then later he flipped and said, no, it's all fake. I don't believe any of it. He just can't wrap his mind around it. And that's okay. It's probably a majority of the planet would feel that way. Us magical folks, we really delve into it and we see the proof and we can feel some of these people who are channeling or giving messages or psychics or mediums. People like you and I, we're interviewing them, we're getting readings from them, we're involved. And so we see the proof. There's like no other explanation. It can't not be, with a lot of these people. So for me, it's like, yes, no. And I give readings myself and people will say, no, oh, that was spot on. I can't believe it. Things that are not just something you could make up. How would you know that? So we know that we're tapped in to that, the astral, the other fields, the other dimensions. We're energy and we can do that. But for the average muggle, as we say, it's harder for them to really accept it, or they may think, oh, they were just lucky guessing that or, whatever. So he did try. I give him a big applause for going the one time.
Well, I must, say, I think it's just kind of also a straight male thing. And we've had an episode of that, about that topic on the podcast. Yeah. I think it's just something that about, they feel like it's being vulnerable, or I'm not sure what it is, but we got to get a lot more of our straight men friends into being open somehow about all this fun stuff.
There is more and more, I think. I've met, I have a client right now for matchmaking. He's a straight male and he's into all of this stuff. I mean, as much as I am, or maybe more. And he got into it a few years back. He was a very staunch Christian for years and years and years, like born again Christian type. And then he realized, he says, oh, I think this dogma is really not working for me. And he started delving into all the spiritual stuff. And he's into the Akashic records and past lives and crystals and astrology and readings. He's just like I was when I first started getting into it. Like, I've got to try it all.
Yeah.
Can't get enough. It's like, saturate me with it. Yeah.
I think back to your first book and we talked about it a lot in your last visit here, but the bamboo beating was just like, I remember I almost peed reading that chapter because it was so hilarious. And I was texting you going, OMG.
That was funny. I still like to read that. I read that to a couple people recently. I read it out loud because I love that. And that even some of my friends who were kind of into some of this stuff said, Marla, that was crazy. How could, that was ridiculous what you did, but yeah, if you guys want to read, that's in the Buddha Made Me Do It. It's, I think, chapter 2. And I have a Chinese herbalist in Los Angeles. He's not Chinese, but his medicine, he's a doctor of Chinese medicine and he's phenomenal. And he has this modality that he created and he hits you with bamboo to bring up any trauma in the cells and release. And you're not even being hit that hard. It's like he's playing the drums on you or something, and like on your legs and your side of your legs and stuff. And I've never been in so much pain, Patrick, in my life.
And you said you had bruises all over your back?
Oh, all over my body. Well, I did cupping. So I had the cupping bruises or whatever those were, then all over my sides and legs, just bruises, black and blue. And Adolfo freaked. He's like, oh my God.
As
what
he should have.
Why, I'm a very pale redhead. And he's like, oh my God, what if that never goes away? What are you going to do? I says, listen, people wouldn't keep coming back to him if it was permanent, And I did do it about 5 times or something.
And you probably had plans to keep it from him had he not seen all the bruises,
I did,
right?
and I thought, I can't. Yeah, how long? Because it takes quite a few days for all those bruises to fade. Right. I mean, he's going to see it, So I did take off my clothes. I said, I thought, well, I might as well just show you now and get, I braced myself and for the tirade that I got, And he still, he mentioned that for years. He's never was very happy, and I had to pay to get beat. It wasn't cheap. It was $105 a session.
Oh, Marla. But he really does love when you do Reiki sessions on him.
Yes. Yeah, sure. And I think if anybody does, even if somebody doesn't understand it or something, it's very relaxing. I mean, once they try it, and he still does not believe in that distance healing can be real. But, especially since COVID, I do all my healings, the Reiki, by distance. People can order it on my website and they say, oh yeah, I felt tingling. I felt heat. I also do, I'm going to start these up again Saturday evenings. I do a circle for $10. It's on Zoom and people can join. And I do some energy healing right over Zoom. And I'll even say to the people, you may start feeling some heat here. And they do. Then they share and they say what they felt from the energy that I'm sending. So, there is no time and space. It's all energies, but he can't wrap his mind around how can that work.
Yeah.
So I just leave it,
And I imagine that there are probably listeners of this show that also struggle with that too.
Sure.
I imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we come to it when we're ready, or, if it's right for us, everybody. There's so much out there to explore that people find what's comfortable for them.
Right. You mentioned Red Eagle. We were talking about Red Eagle, and Red Eagle had a lot to say about, as a world, what we were learning from the pandemic. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, if I can remember what he said, it was It was a mass event. So it's like the collective consciousness. It's things that happen in our world. It happens for us, and it's our collective consciousness that brings it about. So it was a mass event. And then people, when the pandemic first, I was writing it during that initial of it. And so it was on everybody's minds, and he would talk about it. And he said, well, is it okay that if you sing and dance and you're happy, well, there are some people dying, but people are always dying. And the thing you haven't come to terms with is death. And, do we all have to be sad and moping in the house and crying, or can you be dancing? Can you turn on some music and dance and be joyful and still enjoy life and everything? And he was, talked about a lot of things. And then Phineas is another guide that Riz brings through, and he had some things to say about it as well. And just a lot of things. He'll talk about what happens after we die, and, soulmates and twin flames and all sorts of things. And I sprinkle that in and add how it's applying to my life or the story. And it's just great.
What was your understanding about soulmates and twin flames until just recently? Did you learn about those things?
Yeah. Well, people often, when they're looking for someone, that it's so important, like and even people getting a reading or on the hotlines, I think I'm with, this person's my soulmate or my twin flame. And I would say, don't worry so much about that, so much about the label. And it's interesting because Red Eagle will say, a twin flame, which is more rare, you don't know, maybe you might not want it. It's going to show it. Think of Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain, or maybe a power couple. Could be very tumultuous. It could really bring up things that you need to heal and learn. He says, with a soulmate, you probably won't want to kill the person. With a twin flame, he goes, it's happened.
I remember that. It's happened.
Yeah, it's happened. So
neat.
The soulmate, how you just want to, sometimes you're so like, I can just kill you, but it brings that up, and they're mirrors. Now, a soulmate can be a friend, a pet, we travel in soul groups, or it could be a love connection that's also in your soul group that you were with before. So really, as a matchmaker and a spiritual seeker myself, I would say if you're seeking, don't get too caught up on, I want to find my twin flame, it's because it might not be what you're hoping it'll be. And you just want to find somebody that you're really connected with, aligned with, that you can live with. It's hard enough to find somebody that you can really respect and grow with and all of that and have a lot of fun with. I think that's the most important. And I think what I've seen is people will pick their partners for long-term partners too much based on sexual attraction and looks. That fades, you get that hit. Maybe it's so exciting for 6 months, a year, whatever. And then things start to shift and stuff. So you want to make sure you can be with that person and love that person and respect that person. But we like shiny objects and fun things, and that hit of all those chemicals that are going around in our body. Oh my God. Women will think, I've heard them say, oh, we had such chemistry. That's my soulmate. They just met. It's like, that's just chemicals and oxytocin or, hormones and excitement and sexual tension. That's what that is. That doesn't mean this is going to make a great life partner.
I think that kind of attitude is usually in a specific age range too, right? Like, I think a lot of times as people age and get older, you lose some of that.
Yeah, but the men,
Oh,
it's
the men
interesting.
don't change then,
the
huh?
men don't change so much. Yeah, because to get excited and aroused, a man has to like what he sees, right? So they don't really change that much in that way. They get a bit wiser, but they still like what they like.
Oh, come on, straight men. Oh, that's funny. I still don't know what I think about soulmates and twin flames. I'm not sure how much stock I put in to those, but at the same time, I totally believe in reincarnation, and having, maybe circles of people that you live different lives with. And so I don't know. I guess I'm conflicted when it comes to that. Do you want to talk to us about the woman on the freeway?
Oh, sure. I was on my way to a yoga kind of festival in Hollywood. So I was driving from the Valley in LA, got on the freeway, the 101, and where I got on, you have to get way over to the right, and you have to end up crossing like 5 or 6 lanes. I hate that area, but so I'm on, and I was trying to get over, and a car in LA, if they see you want to get into a lane, they speed up. That's what my experience has been. They're not letting you in. It's like, oh, you want to get in? Yeah, good luck. So you got to start like a couple miles ahead. So I was trying to get in and this car sped up. So I went back into my lane. I had just gone over a little bit and then had to go back. Meanwhile, somebody behind me was speeding up. And I swerved and, barely missed an accident. I was like, oh my God, crisis averted. Thank God, almost crashed, but didn't touch anybody. Nothing happened. So then I'm getting over. And finally I'm over in the lane I need to be. And somebody's behind me just waving their arms, frantically and honking. And I'm like, what's that? And I thought that she maybe was trying to get a hold of somebody else that she was following or something like that. Maybe I didn't know. So then she starts taking out her camera and she's filming me, and I exited and she follows me off the exit. And I was like, oh my God, who is this crazy woman? This is insane. And so anyway, I get to the yoga thing and meet my friends, and I'm there. And then I get a call from Adolfo, and he goes, the police are at our house. And I'm like, what? And he says, yeah, they said you had an accident on the freeway. And I'm like, no, I didn't have an accident on the freeway. I avoided one. I did not have an accident. So apparently that woman had, called the police and said that I hit her. So then they had to come back, and it was all this thing. And then she said she was injured, and they looked at my car. They came out and said, well, there's no dent. There's nothing. You haven't hit anyone, obviously, but she hit, I guess, the wall, so then I did use some magic that I always like to suggest to people. So this is something great to do, because then the insurance company was saying, well, now she's saying she's injured. But I'm like, I was like, this is turning into a nightmare. I didn't even hit anybody. So I thought, I've got to do something. So I pull out my cauldron and I wrote her name on a piece of paper. I put crystals around and candles and make it real magical. And then I said my prayers like of releasing, please, you can say whatever you want. You do your little releasing prayer. And this is good too. If you want to cut, it's like a cutting cords or releasing. If you want to release a person, a situation, a former lover, if you're breaking up, whatever. But I really, did my little, then I burned her name. Oh, and I shook my rattle. I did a whole thing, like this whole shamanic thing that I made up, and it was kind of powerful. And
it probably felt pretty good.
It felt good to do it. And then I never heard anything again. And I checked in with that insurance woman, and she goes, you know what? She's disappeared. We can't get a hold of her anymore. We've never heard from her again. So I was like, yay, I felt like that my ritual worked. She may have just realized she didn't have a case, but, it felt good to do that releasing ritual.
But also, you could be a really awesome witch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I do have stories in there of me chasing away negative lower entities. A woman overseas who I did it, there was entities that were having sex with her at night that she had invited in, and I cleared that. I didn't even charge her. I said, I hadn't done this before. So I said, let me just try it. I'm not going to charge you anything. And I did it, and they were gone and they didn't come back. And then my mom's neighbor had been plagued with spirits or entities for years, and they'd knock her out of bed. They'd slap her in the face. She didn't want me for years, she says, I don't want you to give me any energy healing or anything because I don't want those entities to jump onto you. So I said, fine. So then one day she just came and says, I'm desperate. Please come over. And I cleared the house. And she said, oh, I never slept so well. I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night, go to the couch because my husband was bothered. The entities didn't come and bother her. So I was thrilled. So I'm like, ooh, I'm a dark entity butt kicker.
Yeah. I wonder if you would talk about a special trip that you took to a beautiful cabin in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, up here in the Pacific Northwest, I decided that I needed a little retreat for myself, a little getaway. And in the book, you'll see where me and my hubby have a lot of contention, a lot of headbutting over, I really changed over the years from more a corporate woman who was interested in metaphysics to a woman that really went down the rabbit hole with all of the esoteric stuff and the witchy stuff, and really hard for him to accept a lot of it. And so we'd get into arguments and stuff. And I said, I need to have a little 2-day retreat by myself. So I rented an Airbnb in the forest, and it was so beautiful. And I decided to do, which I had done before, so I felt comfortable enough to do it alone. I did mushrooms, psilocybin. I did the plant medicine journey. And a lot of people would say, oh, you did it yourself. And it's I take it to be as a very sacred. There's a lot of interest now around plant medicine. Some people do ayahuasca or some different plant medicines. I like the psilocybin. And so I acquired some in chocolate and I brought it there, and I spent one night and then the next morning. So I took it in the morning, and then it was an all day thing. And I really realized that I took probably a bigger dose than I should have to do it alone. It was a deep one. It was really hard. And for me, I use it to bring up pain, to bring up past life stuff, to clear things. And there's a lot of crying. There's a lot of sometimes screaming, or then there's some beautiful things too. But that was a very deep journey that I did there. And then I sat out on the porch, and I had some beautiful fresh eggs from the hens that were there, and coffee, and I did some psychic readings on the hotlines. And I just was like, I think it's so important. And especially if you're in a relationship and it's a little stale, or you're having some issues, or if you're maybe have a stressful job, or I think it's so wonderful if we can just take 2 or 3 days by ourselves and just go and do, whether it's, you don't have to use plant medicine, but you could do maybe a little cacao ceremony or a little something to bring us back to ourselves, journaling, taking a nice bath, walking in the forest, that connecting, because we get so caught up in the day to day, or even if it's just like watching Netflix every night or whatever, it's like we're too much in the 3D. And I think if we can refresh our soul and connect with our higher self, I think it's great. So I tell the story in there about that journey. I did document it. I have a journal that I wrote in, but I think I was kind of brave to do that one alone. I've tried some pretty wacky stuff.
You have.
Beaten by bamboo, plant medicine journeys, and and people are shocked at me too. And especially one of my girlfriends, well, Julie, she's in the book, and she's like, I can't believe it, Marla, that you would do that. You're so straight laced and kind of almost goody two shoes, and you do plant medicine. I can't believe it.
Well, in your defense on going alone on your own, we come in the world by ourselves. We leave the world on our own. And, if you're wanting to have a spiritual experience, to me, it makes sense that you go it alone on that, because it only involves you. It doesn't involve anybody else.
Mm-hmm. It's good. I like to have somebody there, like a shaman, to guide me normally. But I did that one alone. So I wouldn't recommend it to somebody to just go do that. They should look into it more and stuff first, really research and before you do something like that. But it was pretty enlightening.
What is your most treasured possession?
Oh, well, one of my most treasured possessions is my crystal skull, Nigl. It is a geode So it's clear quartz crystal and agate. And at the top of his head is open, so you can see the glittery crystals. And it's probably the size of, maybe a big apple, like an apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just beautiful. And I tell the story of how I acquired Nigl. I went to a New Age Christmas bazaar of this woman who had it in her home. And Julie and I went and we said, we're not going to buy anything because we knew that there'd be crystals for sale and this and that. And we're like, we've got plenty. We don't need to be spending money, but we're just going for some champagne and to mingle. And so we were walking around and I was looking at the crystals and I saw one lone crystal skull. And I always wanted one, always wanted a crystal skull, never bought one. They can be quite pricey. And I said, ooh, this one's beautiful. I pick it up and look at the price, $155. And I said, I don't need to be spending that. And I set it down. And then I'm looking, and then two women came up and one of them picked it up. And I was panicking inside. I was like, no, I put it down. That's mine. I was like really panicking. And she set it down and I snatched it back up. And I said to Julie, yeah, look what I'm buying. And she's like, oh, Marla, you're a professional woman. You can afford it. What's the big deal? Get it. Look. And then she says, look what I'm getting. So I took it home and I thought, I says, I wonder, should name it. And then I thought, well, let me ask, maybe it has a name. And I sat it and, I cleansed it and, saged it and consecrated it. And then I got out my little talking board and I sat it in front of me and I said, because I'm very proficient on the board now, I use it alone. And so I said, hey, do you have a name? What's your name? And the board spelled out Nigl, Nigl. And I was like, wow, you look like a Nigl. I like it, so his name's Nigl and I've got him, always nearby. And I did have some magical experiences with him that night. I put him next to my bed and there were some pretty crazy things at night that happened to me, astral wise and third eye wise, which I put in the book, The Magic Seeker. So you can read about that. But I love that. I just have the one crystal skull so far, but I do see in the future acquiring maybe a couple more.
Now tell the truth. Were you like sending energy darts at the woman trying to buy Nigl?
Yes, I was beaming energy darts out of my eyeballs. Don't, put that down.
I'm trying to remember because I follow you and I don't remember if you've posted pictures of Nigl.
Oh, I'll have to do that.
I think you should.
Yeah. I'll post it with this episode and everything when we're putting it up.
Okay, there you go.
On my Facebook, I'll add some pictures of Nigl.
So I want you to have the opportunity to give us any final thoughts that you might have. And then, this is your moment of shameless self-promotion of anything coming up in the future for Marla Martenson and where people find you in the book and all of that.
Yes. Well, go to my website, marlamartenson.com, MarlaMartenson. Everything's there. You can get a reading. You can join one of my circles. I've got the coaching, the matchmaking, free downloadable meditations, guided meditations. One's for to raise your frequency and one is for boundaries. And I just, I wrote The Magic Seeker because I just feel that we can't just go through life in, the day-to-day doldrums and just getting through it and, TGIF, it's Friday, or, oh my God, it's a dreaded Monday. We've got to add some magic to our lives. And any way you can do that, whether it's pulling some cards or working with some crystals or going in the forest or, making some kind of special magical tea, whatever it is, it just brings that spark into life. And that's what I'm all about. I really, I just love that. The magical aspects of us all, and we all have that divine spark and we've all got it in us, and we are pure light, we are energy. And I just like people to remember that, because we get bogged down in thinking maybe we're not so happy with our physical body or something that's going on, or we're aging or this or that, or does somebody like how I look? Just remember we are like these amazing energetic beings. And I love working with that energy. So remember that about you. Each and every person is special and a spark of the divine.
I just have to tell you, I have been pretty interested in the last couple of years. I've been more interested in memoir than I ever was. And so I've been reading quite a few more memoirs. And this is a beautiful book about, your most recent journey. And so I think people should check it out. Thank you, Marla Martenson. You rock for coming back.
Yay, Patrick, you rock for having me back. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the following super Paranerds who support the show at patreon.com/Big Seance. Daryl, James Deacon, Genesis, Natalie, Kim Robb, Josiel Lorenzo, Susan Davey, and Amy Park Gedicke. My supporters at the Parlor guest level, who can be found at bigseance.com/Parlor guests, are Linda of shimmeringmoons.com, Anne Rekovich of ozparatech.com, Denise Sia of Raven Haunts Paranormal, Janae Michaels of Grey House Tarot and Farm Artifacts, Chelsea from Cheers with Chelsea, Sarita Cockrum, Christine Rath Selhi, Mitchell Coombs, Christine Ferrens, Mindy Kentop, Hope Pataglia, Cassie Keller, Melissa Armour, Diane Rax, Nettie, Dina DeCastro of Dina DeCastro Astrology, Bruce Williams, Christopher Kohler, Lana and John of Carbon Lilies, Jim Budd, David Rubenstein, and Norman and Linda Keller. That sound you just heard was the Above and Beyond There's Not Even a Category for Your Level of Support fireworks display. Because I have 6 awesome listeners who support the show at the $10 level. Peggy Hagan, Glenna Becker, Steve Skinner, Kevin Gilbert, AJ Meredith, and James Wilfong. So thank you, Peggy, Glenna, Steve, Kevin, AJ, and James. And thank you, Paranerds. For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com. And you can continue the discussion and hang out with a great community of Paranerds by joining us in the Big Seance Parlor on Facebook. Want to hear your voice in a future episode? Go to bigseance.com/feedback to learn how. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.